Hi, my name is Amanda Panacea, and you're listening to the Healer Revolution podcast. This is a community for self-healers, biohackers, practitioners, and any other helping professionals. You're in the right place if you're seeking conversations about how pain becomes passion, the connection between physical, energetic, mental, and our spiritual self, finding your body's ancient wisdom, the latest biohacking technologies, clinical research, and if you just want to nerd out about complex biochemistry and quantum physics. But this is also for entrepreneurs who seek infinite abundance and a supportive community. So pour a cup of King coffee or Sisters tea and let's join the revolution. Welcome to the Healer Revolution podcast. I am Amanda Panacea, and in this episode, I sit down with Monica Milewski. She's a therapeutic astrologer and the founder of NOONLIT SAGE Astrology. And this is a really cool, deep and fascinating conversation, not just about astrology, but about astrocartography. I had never heard this word before until I started traveling, and so many people messaged me about having a guest on to discuss and go deeper into how your location on the globe affects your life depending on your astrology and when and where you were born and the alignment of the stars and all that good stuff. So ever since I started traveling, I was increasingly curious about how location affects you because my boyfriend and I had both been getting injured so much when we first got to Thailand and we were living in Bangkok. And in this episode, we're going to explore that curiosity a little bit more and kind of go into detail how your birth chart can reveal where on earth you might be most supported, or also learn lessons in topics like love, career, healing, or transformation. I wanted to have Monica specifically on because she blends astrology, psychology, and even things like herbalism. So she has a really grounded therapeutic lens of how all of these things blend together. She also has a background in social work and child development. And so she's really great at helping people understand their own blueprint and also ways to support deep inner healing. So it's not just through that one lens of astrology. You can use astrocartography not to really determine where you should live for what reason, although that might be helpful, but kind of how to work with those planetary energies depending on where you are, where you're traveling to. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Healer Revolution podcast. I am Amanda Panacea, and today I'm really excited to sit down with Monica at NOONLIT SAGE. She is a therapeutic astrologer. Hi, Monica. How are you?
Hi, really happy to be here and excited to talk all things astrology today.
Awesome. Yeah, we've known each other for a couple years now because of
hmm
bioenergetic testing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we've talked about all sorts of cool stuff, but I'm really interested to hear about like why astrology, what is therapeutic astrology, and we have some really interesting questions or topics to talk about today about how astrology can actually help you in your life instead of just generalized, you're going to have a great year type stuff. Like it can get
hmm
very specific, which I actually had no idea.
Oh, yes, the layers are very deep with it, if you want to go that deep. But yeah, so I started off just as a kid, super interested in myself, understanding myself, the psyche. And so psychology was the clearest way to do that. And so I pursued education in that and got my master's of social work and master's of child development. The aim being to, be a therapist. So to cut it to the short is that I then found astrology and merged the two worlds together. So that's why I call myself a therapeutic astrologer, because I go deeper than, let's say, normally you would hear on the astrology memes or the very generalized stereotypical stuff with astrology. I'm actually going to talk about it in a deep way that resonates with all the healing work that most healers do in the space, using the lens and system of astrology to help guide us in understanding possible root causes or reasons for why certain things are happening in your life the way they are.
Mhm. Yeah, so like we all know, oh, I'm a Virgo, oh, I'm a Taurus. What is astrology essentially though? Because,
Mhm.
we talk about like, oh, when I was born, this planet was here. Is there actual like astronomy involved, or how does astrology really work?
Yeah, great question. So basically, astrology is that path potential for yourself based on where the planets were when you were born in what constellation. There's a couple different types of astrology as well that we don't really need to go into the specifics of that, but pretty much the way that things are in life is that there's a continual progression of those cycles of the planets in those constellations. So the easiest thing to note with that is that we go through, let's say when you say your sun sign, right? You're like, oh, I was born in this time of year, so I'm a sun in Taurus. Well, the sun constantly moves around the zodiac sign wheel, and so it moves around that within a year's time, which is why we get it within a year. But other planets move at different speeds, so they have different times when they are in a certain zodiac sign. And so at the time of birth, you take into consideration all the planets and where they were in that zodiac wheel to get a representation of basically like the most popular, your personality traits, and how you embody yourself. And I like to even speak on it on a broader level of like elemental expression energetically. So, the four elements: fire, air, earth, water. Those are like the main groupings. And of course, there's 3 signs per element, which gets a little more granular and specific to how does this differentiate? Like an Aries is different than a Leo, but they're both fire signs per se. So
Hmm.
when you take into consideration like the astrology wheel and the birth chart, it also it's grouped into like houses, which is parts of your life, areas of your life. So if people are like curious about their love life or their career, I can look to what's going on in that area of the chart. And like at the time of your birth, it's basically showing you that potential of development that you could have in this life for those energies. And a popular thing is like, oh, well, it's just this one way, or it's a stereotypical. Whereas I like to talk about everything in spectrums. So an energy spectrum of possibility, you could go from underexpressed to overexpressed. So it's not quite like that easy. Like people think it's so easy, like, oh, I'm just going to plug this in and I'm going to know exactly who I am. I grew up very much not resonating with being a Leo sun growing up, but it was due to underexpression of that energy signature, due to things like environment, how I grew up, household culture, a lot of other factors aside from just the astrology. But that could go into a whole topic of its own. So yeah, I hope that helps to clarify that.
Yeah, and I've lots of men usually are like, oh, astrology is bullshit. It's not
Mhm.
real. But my favorite example to use is that when I met my boyfriend, he had no idea what sign he was. He thought it was all just made up woo woo. And he is the most stereotypical Taurus sun sign. And he also has like Virgo in his I think moon and ascending. And it just, his entire personality is exactly what it would be described as through the lens of
Yeah.
astrology. And every time I see something that's like his exact personality, I show it to him. He's like, maybe it is a little accurate. Because how else do you explain that someone, I've met other people that probably are that way too, but getting to know someone who didn't have like the placebo influence of like, oh, this is how I might supposed to be. And
Mhm.
seeing them being exactly with those traits and qualities is just, it was wild.
Yeah, and I think a practice I have that's a little different maybe than most astrologers is I still really do rely on my intuition first and foremost.
Mhm.
Really connecting to that and healing that has been powerful. And so maybe there's an off day I'm having, and I'm just like, man, I'm going through my emotions or whatnot. And then I say, wait a minute, let me check the astrology and go there and go, oh, there's my confirmation of like why I'm experiencing it, but I'm
Mhm.
not very obsessive, let's say, to say I'm
Yeah.
going to pinpoint every minute of every day and live my life according to this system, because that's also an extreme, right? Now you're
Right.
over relying, and I'm all about empowerment. So I really do like to have a nice balance with that, to say that yes, there's these factors, but they're not going to determine like exactly everything that happens, and you do have a say. But yeah, it's like the weather, like you're going to respond to it. energetically, even if you believe in it or not. And I think the easiest thing for people who say, oh, it's not real, it's like, oh, so it's just somehow during the full moons, like everybody's more emotional,
Yeah.
or the tides are changing and we're made of water. It's like you don't have to believe it. It does happen, and it's kind of like very much seen out in the world as evidence. Let's say that there's a pattern. So I was
Yeah.
always fascinated with those patterns and like wanting to understand it, so I could be better prepared, better understanding of everything. And it's definitely helped me to feel more grounded, just knowing that there's a system out there energetically that we can count on and rely on. And it's not just all unknown or all chance per se.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I used to work in psychiatric hospitals, and if you've ever worked in those crisis like facilities or as a crisis worker, you know during the full moon is an influx and so many more people coming in, hurt, psychosis, mania, bipolar. It can get really wild during full moons. And even like you said, if you don't believe in it, you can see the patterns that show up in the
Mhm.
world. So that's really cool. Tell me more a little bit about some of the like subsets of astrology. Like I know we're going to talk about the astrocartography, which is something I just learned about, but I would really love to get into besides just the basic, like, oh, this is your personality type, or
Mhm.
this planet's going into retrograde, prepare to have some things stirred up. What are some of the things that astrology could essentially help us with?
Absolutely. It definitely has a lot more to it than just the personality. And I can speak to a couple of the routes I can go to using your birth chart. I can speak to your business strategy. I really like how you can use the different planets and the energies to align yourself with like your career and how you show up in a business and how you make use of your energy in the most aligned way. So you're not having to try this and then you fail and then you're just blindly going into it. And then of course with timing, especially for business owners, that's so crucial to help you understand, like, you know what, there is going to be this thing, you might want to plan around it instead of having to just like face yourself against failed plans or things. But of course, I'm never going to say it's 100% accurate, but that's one
Right.
thing. I really love medical astrology, which is a whole nother topic of conversation for another time. But basically, the signs, the zodiac signs, also correlate to parts of our bodies. So when I look at a birth chart, I could say, oh, not only is this going to show and represent a part of your personality, it might actually show and represent different parts of your body, either working in operation very seamlessly or not so much. And definitely when it comes to my own health journey, it's right there in the chart. It's pretty like night and day. Like you can see it right away. I have this opposition between Capricorn and Cancer, which is like Capricorn rules the bones and the skeletal structure. I had arthritis growing up from a very early age. And then Cancer representing like gut and gut health and like that dynamic of like, that's how I healed it and balanced it out ultimately. Um, but I didn't know that
Yeah.
when I was going through it. And so after I healed, I found out about it. I was like, wow, it's right there. Not to say, of course, that it would absolutely like happen in every situation. Every situation is going to be different. And even right now, I'm doing better with it, right? So it depends. But there were certain transits, even like that activated it. And so I went back in time to go to those times in my life when it was activated. And sure enough, in the chart, you could see kind of like when the full moon, you're preparing for the full moon, right? You could be like, oh, something might be happening during that time. So medical astrology is definitely not as known as far as how
Mhm.
you can utilize your birth chart, but it's a very powerful tool to help in the whole health journey to just understand and become aware, and of course, look out for those timings. But what we were going to speak on is astrocartography, which is really fun. And that is the process and technique of taking the birth chart and placing it over the world and basically having kind of a birth chart for the world to show you certain locations and what kind of energies and themes you might encounter in those parts of the world when you either visit them or live in them. And as we'll discuss, like I definitely had a powerful example of how my life changed by moving somewhere and experiencing a different environment. But as with everything, it's not deterministic. And unfortunately, it's not as easy as like, oh, it says this in this part of the world, and that's what will happen, right?
Yeah.
So there's layers to this spiritually, energetically, and I hope to help spread the word about that, of like how to actually use this, because people will believe kind of like how sun sign compatibility works. It's like, no, that's not how it works. It's not like, oh, well, our signs are not compatible, so we're just not going to work out. Absolutely. That's like probably one of the most false things I've seen. And that's not how it works. There's so much to compatibility with astrology and working with an astrologer on that. But it's again the same thing with astrocartography. It's going to offer you a lot of insight, but you also have to understand where you're at in your journey of your evolution, your development, and then how you meet that when you go to those places. So,
Right. Yeah, it's just like in a relationship, it's like you're understanding your love language. Like it doesn't mean because you don't have the same love language or you have different love languages that it's not going to work out. It's
mhm.
that if you understand these things a little bit better, if you are aware, or even attachment styles, if you are aware of how your partner will respond or the city you're in, do you need to, watch out for this or be more careful or make changes to some of the things in that city. It's going to depend on the outcome, right? It's just like with therapy, with anything, the awareness helps you to make different decisions and different choices. It doesn't
Yep.
determine your life or your outcome. So actually,
Mhm.
that's one of the things that I think I never got into astrology deeply because I am so obsessed with radical responsibility. And I fear that like bypassing piece, that like leaning too far into something that might not, that might take away my power and lead me to think that I'm a victim of things happening and I can't control them. So, do you see that happening a lot in the field, or like how do you kind of work with somebody who might be over relying on, well, this is what my chart says, or this is what's going to happen instead of that empowerment piece?
Absolutely. I mean, I would unfortunately say it's pretty obvious when you look at social media how many people have been led into this sense of this is an external way I'm going to feel empowered by relying on this because I've never really developed my own internal locus of control.
Hmm.
And sure, at the very beginning stages, I probably was a little bit like that too, where it's this new thing, a shiny way to bypass basically my own journey into the real healing. And so I think, as with anything, you can kind of twist it and use it for what purpose you would want it for. And so when I see so much of the stereotypical conversations and stereotypes of, let's say, this zodiac sign versus that zodiac sign, I can see we're still a bit far away from the true integration of how powerful and positive astrology can be in helping us heal. But I'm hoping to be a part of that, where when I am with clients, I always at the very beginning, mention that I am not a psychic. I'm not here to predict your future. You have full force. This is just me helping you see some insights into the potential and the spectrum of your energy. And honestly, when I'm in a reading, I am very focused on helping people identify the spectrum of each zodiac sign so that they can then reflect back to me in that session of like, oh, wow, actually, I'm over here. And that
Hmm.
self identification helps them to see, well, they might be here, but I can help them with the tools to get back into balance if they'd like to, right? Sometimes the imbalance does serve a purpose too. And it's necessary to have a mirror in that way. But yes, it's so important, especially like I'm very passionate about helping people realize that there is a spectrum to the energy expression. And just like there's winter when it's really cold and summer when it's really hot, we go back and forth in that duality. Um, so the easiest analogy is basically is the weather. If there's a storm outside, you could either ignore it and not even check and then go and get wet and rained on because you weren't prepared, or you could kind of check ahead and be like, oh, it seems like it might rain. I might want to take an umbrella and just kind of maybe a hat or a jacket. Uh, that's basically what the energies are like when you say there's a horoscope. There's a potential, but it doesn't mean it's absolutely going to happen. But it's nice to be prepared just in case.
Yeah, that's a really good analogy. And is human design, does that fall into astrology or is that something different? Because I feel like that got really popular recently.
Yeah, I'm not a human design specialist by any means. I've heard of it and kind of like, looked up my own thing with that. I definitely, from what I know of it, there's like some correlation within like that, but I'm not 100% sure, and I wouldn't be able to speak to exactly
Hmm.
the system of human design and where that originates or how it operates. But it's similar in a way where it's helping you understand different parts of yourself and
Yeah.
basically explaining that, you know what, you're probably not going to operate and do things in the same manner as someone else who has a different chart in your human design. And I think that's what I really love about things like human design and astrology is it helps us to affirm every person's path. It's not just supposed to be one way. Society loves to do that and just say everybody's got to do it one way, or there's only one approach that's okay or good enough. And I just love that I can validate and affirm that you're unique person and this is how you best operate. And of course, I received the response back of like, yes, that does feel good for me, or I resonate with that, and I always check in on that.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think that's what really makes you different is that therapist background, social work, and being able to understand like that people really do they want control, but they also really need that trust in themselves to make their own decisions. When we live in fear or like we're not in control, that's gonna change the way our nervous system, our body responds to the environment. So being able to make sure people are empowered instead of just like, oh, Mercury retrograde, or I don't even know some of the other terms. Like astrology is really foreign to me still, but you know what I mean when people are blaming
Yeah.
things on the moon, and we've all seen the memes of like girl with her life
Mhm.
is a disaster and she's like, oh, it's the moon.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's part truth to that, like I said. I mean, if you're feeling a certain way because it's a cloudy day and I'm moody because of that, like, yeah, that did affect me.
Hmm.
But I
Yeah.
also have the ability to turn my mood around if it's cloudy and say I'm going to make the best of this day. So at the end of the day, yes, there's an empowerment needed, and I think people will get to that part of their journey when it's no longer possible to hide from it. So if you're a fan of astrology, but you've just, let's say you're constantly looking to like the guidance, like someone has to tell me this and someone, when is what going to happen? And then there's like an anxiety around it. That to me is definitely like something's needing to be healed there. And you
Hmm.
could, before astrology became popular, I'm sure there were other things that people used to feel somewhat safe and grounded within that sense of not being able to be empowered or in control.
Hmm.
And just so happens that now astrology is the thing. And
Well,
um, yeah.
yeah, we definitely do this with all things. I mean, people still do this with functional medicine and
Mhm.
any other type of healing modality is find me the best guru, find me the best doctor, find me the best this, so they can tell me what I need to do because I feel like I've lost um, that ability, that intuition, that sovereignty to know what is my path. So all of these
Mhm.
things, no matter what it is, we can use them as a tool to look outside of ourselves. But ultimately, I love that you bring it back to like, no, this is still we still have the free will. We still have the ability to make these changes and to listen to what we actually do need without looking for something outside.
Absolutely.
So let's get into astrocartography because I just
Mhm.
found this out maybe like a month ago because my boyfriend and I, we've been traveling Asia and we were in Bangkok and we kept getting injured in Bangkok. Him especially. He started doing Muay Thai and he just, kept getting injured in Muay Thai, which was like, not that big deal, but he also kept falling. He broke his hand. And I tweaked my back. Something else happened to me. I can't remember at this moment, but we were just like, what is going on? Like, why can't we just not be getting injured? And somebody mentioned, oh, maybe you've got, was it Venus lines or Mercury lines? through that city.
Maybe
Um,
Mars.
okay, maybe Mars. Yeah, I don't even remember. So I was like, what does that mean? So tell us what astrocartography is and yeah, just give us the details on this.
Absolutely. Yeah, it really ties nicely into what we were just talking about. So, astrocartography, like I mentioned, is taking your birth chart and the energies in the chart and then placing it around the world to see what areas might have a certain theme. The lines that you see in that chart will be connected to the planets in the birth chart. And some of those lines and planets will have a, let's say, more positive influence, perhaps, and some might have a bit more of a negative or like difficult. I don't want to say negative because there's
Yeah.
positive things and difficulties anyway. Um, but basically, if you are living in a certain place for a really long time in your life and things just like they keep repeating over and over, you can't seem to get out of that stage of your life and the development. Perhaps if you move somewhere else, like even if with let's take astrology out of the picture. If you're going to move somewhere else, you're going to have a new revelation, a new life, everything, right? So it's not to say that like the astrology is going to make something happen, but the
Right.
astrocartography, what it can do is it can help you when relocating or visiting a place to kind of get a look into what's the potential here for me. What might I be experiencing energetically as the theme of my development here? And so when you're doing something like changing your whole life and moving somewhere, I think it would be kind of nice to know that you're going to move somewhere that's going to be a bit more positive. Um, but even for myself, I wasn't into astrology at the time when I made the big move in my life. And intuitively, my spirit, my soul, whatever you want to call it, already kind of knew what I needed. And then after I moved, I got into astrology and astrocartography. I checked and I was like, whoa, this is crazy that I moved here and there's a line and all of it. It made so much sense as to how it all worked out. So I think even again, if you don't believe it, things will happen to mirror where you're at and what you need in your time of your journey to explore those themes. Now, not to say that you both needed to explore themes of getting injured or, having those difficulties, but there's a lot of things within the psyche that do sometimes need to be brought up to attention. And that could go into a much deeper conversation as to the why and what does that
Yeah.
represent and mean for you. But essentially, yes, there's certain themes and areas of life that get explored when you move to different areas, and the birth chart will help you see what that is.
Yeah. So when you're doing that calculation, um, you really need a very specific birth time, is what I learned. Like that
Yes.
is the most important. But the location of your birth is not as important, or can that be in just a general area?
So this is what I will say with that part, because
Mhm.
what you can also do is a relocation chart, meaning, let's say I originated from Chicago and now I'm in Phoenix, Arizona, and I would then take my exact birth date and birth time, but instead of putting the location as Chicago, I would put it as Phoenix to see what could have changed, let's say, during that time of birth for me, as far as where the energies are in the chart, like what the houses are. So let's say if you're moving a very drastic difference away from where you originated, that's where you'll see the most change in the relocation birth chart. But yes, the time of birth is important because that's what basically sets into place where the houses are. If you don't have the time of birth, you get a general look at your energies, but you can't necessarily pinpoint to what area of life those energies will most be represented in. So not only could I look at the astrocartography map, I could also do a relocation chart to see like, oh, will there be a different focus in the area of life when you're in this space for
Mhm.
yourself?
Interesting. So when you're kind of looking for the places where you'll have positive experiences, what are some of the lines essentially? It kind of looks like when you look at a map, it looks like the lines of like an airplane path, right? Like they
Uh-huh.
just go
Yeah.
straight through certain parts. So what kind of lines are the positive ones that you want to be in? And what are some of those negative ones like the Mars line? What does that mean essentially?
Definitely. So I'll kind of put a disclaimer with this. You could still have not so good things on a positive line
Yeah.
and some really good stuff in a not so great line. So that's part of the mistake that people make is they think like, oh, I'll just find this line, I'll go there and everything will be great. And I've met people and they've explained to me, I've looked at their astrocartography and I absolutely see, well, that was unexpected. Like you didn't think that would
Yeah.
happen. But basically, yes, overall, there'll be some lines that will lean towards a better experience or not. Some of those would be your sun. Your sun is the way you shine. It's the way you illuminate yourself the best. And if it's a good aspect, then it's probably a lucky one. A little fun fact is, with the astrocartographers of the day, have noticed that people who have a sun line going through Hollywood tend to be the celebrities and whatnot. And I think like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. Like that is the area of them illuminating themselves and being seen even by the world. So I thought that was a little fun fact. Another one is Venus. Venus is the planet of luck, love, and abundance. So of course you would think like, okay, I'm going to find the love of my life there, and that can be the case. There's a part of the birth chart called the descendant, which is also connected to, let's say, love life area and like finding the other or the one. So if you found something like on a descendant line, that might be, let's say, a positive if you're looking for that, and maybe you find it. And I think, there's ways you can interpret it different things. Like if you're really wanting to be in touch with your emotions, go to a moon line and you'll definitely have that. But even across genders, that could show differently because let's say we're trained in society like men are not going to be as emotional, right? And if they're moving to a moon line, they're probably gonna have to go inward more and experience those emotions they've been suppressing a lot. And so it might be tougher for them to do that versus not. So, true node is also like your purpose and mission in this life. So, if you're really wanting to really fulfill your potential, go to your true node line. Probably there'll be something there for you. And I'm really curious, even myself. Like I know where mine is, and I'm like, oh, it's just so interesting to think like, what could happen if I go there? Well, like all the blessings and synchronicities might come up. But yeah, those would be a few of the good ones. Jupiter, oh, of course, Jupiter is mine that I'm on right now. And Jupiter just expands everything in life, so it's a continual evolution and continual expansions, which I absolutely have had here for the last 7 years. It's nonstop. I cannot avoid it. Every year just seems like a whole new chapter of my evolution unfolding. So that would technically be a good thing. Now, the way I will quickly say it could not be a great thing is like, well, it's kind of tough to constantly be expanding and going into the depths of releasing and letting go of my old self. So while I've had a lot of expansion, I've also had connections fall away and just the layers and the shedding happen. And that's a tough part too. So it's not always the easiest, but a worthwhile journey for sure. And I've enjoyed the whole expansion part of it. The difficult lines, this will be immediately my mind goes to Saturn and Pluto. Saturn represents restriction, karma, lessons, and discipline. So at just the sound of that, you could think if I go there, I'm going to go through some difficult lessons probably to get more disciplined and learn to align myself more. Saturn, even though it's very tough on you, it's for a good purpose. Think of like um, trying to rough out a diamond, right? And like you have to kind of cut at the edges. I don't know how they do that, but you know what I mean. You get the diamond at the end of the day. Um, and there's a restrictive energy there. So it's probably the opposite, like I just said, my Jupiter. But then there's Pluto. Pluto is a very deeply transformative energy. So think of like the Tower card in tarot, things just falling apart and then you rebirthing from the ashes. So it's going to require a lot of effort probably to face those inner um, roots of whatever is misaligned in your life or needs healing. Um, Chiron is the core wound in our chart. So we call it the wounded healer or an Achilles heel of your energy. So if I were to think of you being on a Chiron line, I'm assuming you're probably going to go deep into the inner work to do a lot of major healing. And again, that's going to take a lot out of you probably versus being on a Venus line, just coasting, enjoying life, and all the blessings you could get from it. So there's certain lines, and like you in your case, Mars as well. Mars is not necessarily, and I don't ever want to paint it like this, like, oh, because it's the god of war and aggression, you're just going to find all these difficult, angry experiences. It's also a proactive energy. So Mars is like taking action and moving yourself forward and constantly on the go, constantly in your masculine energy. And so it's the opposite of like Venus, where you're just kind of receiving the blessings and I just receive all this love. Mars is like, no, you're activated. You're on guard, you're defensive, you're trying to move forward as well. So it's a lot of energy to be on a Mars line. And intuitively, my Mars is there's a Mars line in Miami, and I've always been like, no, thank you. I don't want to be there. And I had an uncle living there, and I would visit often with my family. And there was just something about that environment that I just didn't fully connect with. And it's probably because I already was experiencing a lot of masculine activation within me. And I was like, I don't need more of that. I do not need more of this like really strong masculine energy. And in fact, I need to go elsewhere to start to bring something else up within me to heal that energy. And ultimately, from all of this, what I really want to share is that astrocartography and astrology and all this, it just helps you to bring what's not been as developed to the surface and offers you a mirror to see like, oh, I might need to work on that. And I've been suppressing it. I've been in denial. I haven't practiced it. And so when it was time for my soul to start expanding, it just naturally, intuitively led me to this place. And then afterward, oh, look at that. There's a line there. um, so I think when you realize that, that's part of that empowerment piece. It's like you're actively creating this, co-creating it with the universe, your journey and how it's going to look. But it's those who are willing to take a look at that, be aware of it, and say, "Oh, this is the challenge. Okay, I accept. Let me work with
Right.
it." It's going to be a lot easier than if you keep resisting the evolution of yourself.
Yeah. And I really resonate with the Mars. So I was born on a Tuesday, which apparently is Mars, and
Mhm.
I've always had problems with like my iron metabolism, and zinc was a mineral that like changed my health. And the Mars and the iron energy go together, is what I've learned. So
Mhm.
people born on a Tuesday will have that Mars energy. I've always been very stuck in the masculine,
Mhm.
very much like go-getter, aggressive. When I have a goal, I will make it happen.
Mhm.
I've always kind of been like a dominant control type A personality. So I'm like, oh, that makes perfect sense. But I only found that out, maybe in the last year about the Tuesday, the Mars, the iron, and of course, like you said, oh, that makes so much sense. And also kind of that voice nagging, yeah, that masculine energy really need to soften. Here's another reminder, like this is something that's really affecting you in the physical. You're seeing it in the iron, you're seeing it with the zinc. We really need you to take those active lifestyle changes and work through whatever you need to work through, to let go, to receive, to be more soft in your energy. And that is probably what's going to bring me the most healing. And I see that with like all the aspects of my life, and in the physical symptoms that show up, in the way that my biology is responding to me, or especially at that time, like really being way too much in the control, way too much in the rigidity. And knowing, like, for me, I made those changes of like moving to another country, starting to really lean into my boyfriend taking more of that, like, I want you to lead me. I'm going to let go of all the things I was doing. I'm going to set up our life so that you really get to take control, and I get to sit back. So it is that like empowerment piece of like, here's where you might have some hiccups, but here's how you can also kind of lean into the solution too.
Yeah, and I think what you're describing there is the spectrum of like Venus and Mars, and it's how being
Hmm.
so much in the Mars, intuitively your soul and you're like, okay, we understand this energy. We don't need to practice
Yeah.
this more. We need to start
Yeah.
practicing more Venus-like energy. What if let's go somewhere else where the
Hmm.
environment's going to not only bring that out of you, but force you to recognize, like, you know what? I do want to lean on my partner. I don't want to always have to be the one to do everything. And so now it's bringing up the planetary expression of Venus for you to integrate into your development and your psyche. So that's part of that astrocartography where you might be pulled to certain areas unknowingly because there might be that imbalance within you, and that if you stay here you're going to stay imbalanced. And ultimately I want to master all the zodiac signs, all the planets, because that's the most holistic you could be, is to understand each part of your expression as a human being and just being on this earth. So I think, yes, intuitively, without even knowing the astrology, you knew it was a time to go work on a different part of your energy and strengthen that as well, so that there can be balance in your system.
Yeah, exactly. And when somebody you did you look up my chart? I can't remember.
I don't think so, no.
Okay. Um, I know somebody looked it up and we saw that I did have a lot of positive lines going through Japan, which is where we are now, and we have not been injured since we got here. Um, and everything's been going fine. But in Bangkok, there was, I believe, that Mars line for me. We didn't look up my boyfriend who was injured way more, but um, kind of close to it. So what happens if you've got tons of lines, positive and negatives, going through a place? Is that like, should you go there? Because it's like, I'm gonna experience everything.
Well, if that happens, all I could say
Mhm.
there is that you're just going to be very activated, right? Like
Okay.
there's going to be things constantly happening because there's so much energy there. So you could think of the opposite, right? What if there's a place that has no lines? Does that mean nothing's happening?
Yeah.
Might mean that you're not going to have as much of an impactful experience. But astrology doesn't make anything necessarily happen. So sure, you could still go through some tough experiences. But as far as like the divine timing of things and the fated events of you going through something, um, yeah, it would be like, I could liken it to signing up for a college degree program. And now you're going to be way busier. You're working a full-time job, trying to manage everything. And there's just so much happening at that phase in your life, versus later on, you don't have as many responsibilities and you can kind of take it easier. So I do think it's like signing up for a really hard workout that you're like, okay, I'm in it. I'm going to just experience life 24/7 happening to me in a way where I'm constantly growing, almost as like when you were a kid and everything just felt new. I'm sure we were all exhausted. That's why we needed so much sleep, is to like regenerate from that experience. And so positive, negative lines, like, yeah, it kind of depends. What I want to say is that, like, what is your spirit and soul needing to bring to the surface? Really, what's
Mhm.
the primary energy? But also, I want to say that for you, I believe it happened during the retrogrades as well.
Mhm.
So that could have played as important of a role in that, of like, retrogrades want us to slow down, and you're probably like here, then there, and I'm here, and you're just all over the place doing so much stuff, when retrograde is a time to actually like not do that, take it easy, start reflecting more, and really getting more in tune with the presence of just where you're at, and not trying to force or push anything or try to be too active. And typically I would see something like, oh, you tripped, you fell, you broke this, that didn't work. And it's trying to bring you back to like, let's be still, let's be present in this moment, let's not rush as much. And that happens. I'm an astrologer. It happens to me too. Like, and it'll happen, but because I know what the energy is, I'm like, okay, all right, I'll slow down and take it easy. But yeah, so the thing with the astrocartography and the Mars line though, is I would also want to look at your actual birth chart, because if there's an aspect to your Mars that's more difficult, or another planet is involved, then that could more so indicate that that will be an even more difficult experience, because it's now taking not only the line and the planet, but also like in your own energy, in your own personality, what parts get along, what don't. And if it's a difficult one, then you're probably going to have that activation. So that's similar to me, where my Jupiter is square my Venus in my chart, and the square just means a point of tension. And as I was reflecting before the podcast, I'm like, you know what? Yeah, even though I've been expanding and all this, like I've struggled in this area too. So it's
Yeah.
not as quite like easy, like, just, oh, here's a line and that's it. As an astrologer, I also want to look at your birth chart to see what influences your Mars sign has in the chart that will play a part in that overall experience of you being on that Mars line.
Okay. And yeah, so it's more multifactorial than just, oh, here's a line, you might experience these things.
Hmm.
How
Hmm.
do those retrogrades play a role? And are they more powerful than the chart lines?
Well, I mean, gosh, more powerful. I think you could say that they're going to have a collective influence. So you can't really get away. Wherever you go in the world, there is a Mercury retrograde happening. So it
Okay.
kind of does have the like first spot as far as what's going on in your energy. And then
Hmm.
you could look at maybe your astrocartography, especially like if you're planning a vacation, moving somewhere during a time of a retrograde, I would for sure want to see what's going on with that, with both parts of that. And
Hmm.
but more powerful, it would be easier, right, if we could say that, but ultimately it's also just part of your journey and like what do you need to experience? What significance does it have for you? That's where I want to talk to you and get to know you better and look at you beyond just your birth chart and actually get to know you as a person. Like, where are you? Because people could have the same birth chart and be in the same place and experience very different things because
Yeah.
of their lived experience. So it's not just the birth chart that makes an impact. Um, so many other factors come into play too.
Yeah, obviously, people can grow up in the same household and experience
Yes.
totally different parents, even if they might have been like a year or two apart and experiencing the same situation. So, yeah, we know that's what I love about self-development is learning all the different niches or nuances and then putting them all together. That's
Mhm.
probably my favorite part of life is understanding the human experience and learning from different gurus and people who have developed programs and processes and then even things like astrology or theories and putting them all together to help to understand, oh, this is actually really normal. This is what everyone goes through. This is how we can optimize. This is how we can really lean into our powers. Everything's for a reason. It's not just random things happening, um, helping to trust essentially like your own life path and
Mhm.
realizing that it might not all have been your fault, but you still have that radical empowering intuition responsibility to make those changes.
Mhm. Yeah, and I always like to say that when you think of astrology, it's part of the masculine healing,
Mm,
because it's a system. There's
yeah.
organization and categorization involved. It's not very random. There's an order to it, and so funny enough, when I do have clients that are men work with me, they really love it actually because it's like, oh, so this means this and this means this and it's a formula and I can kind of understand it that way. I just see the things click in the mind once I explain it very quickly. And then on the other hand, I don't like to just use it as a vacuum. Like I go to sound healing, I go to breath work, I go to other practitioners for other modalities to balance out the more feminine needs of me receiving and just being and not having to think all the time and just put logic to everything, right? Like I said, I always rely on my intuition first and then I check in. So I've now integrated that like feminine part of tuning into my feelings and what they're telling me because that is just as valid as checking the astrology and what's going on in the birth chart, but they work together, and the experiences we have. So I do, though, I've recognized after all these years of doing these readings that, you know what, people who would love to have that kind of security from a, let's say, father figure or like a male figure, providing like, it's going to be okay. This is why XYZ and retrograde will be over at this time. And then this will happen. And it's like, oh, and like I can feel my nervous system calming down. And even in times of distress, when my feminine energy gets higher and I'm dealing with these emotions and I'm not sure. And then, like I told you earlier, I go and check the astrology. It does reassure me, and I find myself calming down a bit because I understand the why. And so I do think it's very important to not just rely on the one thing and really see, like, what are you needing? Are you needing to work on embodying that more masculine energy within yourself that's going to get you to take action and take ownership of your life and realize that there's a lot going on within yourself, and it's not that ex that was toxic and not this, like, it's so easy to point the finger and project it onto other people, but it's much harder to say, you know what, something's going on inside of me and I want to understand what it is, so that then moving forward, I'll still feel upset, I'll still have difficult things. It's never going to solve and make everything perfect, but it does help me build that trust within myself to kind of know what's ahead and the potential of it, and then what can I do to prepare for it. So fit of, let's say, like, bridging this and other modalities together.
Yeah, I love that. These are my favorite things to teach as well. Just how can I be more embodied? How can I learn what I actually need instead of constantly trying to find things to tell me I'm okay or to tell me that what's wrong with me. How do I feel? Like, if I work with a lot of women also very much in that masculine energy of like, there has to be a mathematical equation to solve. Like my body I need XYZ to understand why it's doing this, and learning how to lean into that more of, oh, I actually realize that it's really bothering me, this thing in my relationship, or my job is sucking the life out of me. It's time to go, just those intuitive hits. And we always have to start with the small things first. Like, do I go to the bathroom when I need to go to the bathroom? Do
Mm-hmm.
I recognize when I need to drink water? Like the things that sound so simple, but when you start there, you start to be able to have intuition about the bigger picture, about, do I need to move to a different place? Do I want to start to work on this business? Do I have a big passion that I've been ignoring? And those things start to get easier and easier.
Yeah, the environment plays such a huge role in that, and now that I've experienced that firsthand, I see the immense power in it. I mean, I lived in one spot, Chicago, and I didn't, outside of like Florida and that, I didn't really venture out into the world or see other places. And I would say that my development was kind of tapped out in a certain level being there. And intuitively, I knew that I don't have much else to explore here. I've tried all the routes. I've met who I need to meet, and I just don't see myself progressing beyond that. And I've heard that, like, people encourage their kids to move out of their hometown and just see the world and find other parts of themselves. And I think not only for myself, I've seen it in my family, them also moving here, and they have their own charts, and I've looked at that and just like curious, like, what's going on for them here. But overall it's been a positive change. And it's interesting because now you made me think of, like, there'll be lines in the world that you're never probably going to explore, and there's so many of them that, I mean, you would have to make it your life's mission probably to check every single place. And sometimes it's even in a, like, in the middle of an ocean. So it's not to say that you have to go through every single phase and every single part of that. And yeah, maybe I won't move to another place, maybe I will, and I don't even know when it will happen. It's all up to a bigger power and reason for that. But I'm definitely feeling good where I'm at. So I like, the energy of it. But I'm sure that, like, when I was looking at the chart earlier, I looked at the other places I had intuitively been called to when I was deciding to move. There were three places, like Phoenix, San Diego, and Sacramento. And sure enough, there's significant lines going through each of them, all positive, let's say. But again, you could go to a Venus line, and I've known people who actually lost their job and didn't, they like had a divorce. And you would say, like, wait, it's supposed to be bringing you love and happiness and joy. What's going on here? Well, perhaps they needed to let go of those things to rise to that level of their true self that is in alignment, that will ultimately bring them that which they seek.
Yeah.
So when I look at those lines, I know that, and I know I'm not like, oh, I just got to move there and everything's going to work out.
Right.
And you can do that work here and now. If like, let's say you can't move, you can still do the inner work to recognize the patterns you're going through, the blockages, work with practitioners like myself and yourself, and get to the deeper root cause and see what you could do to change your energy. And maybe, hey, then something does shift and you're able to move. That's all very possible too. So this is all exciting, but for those who are listening who are like, well, I just can't move. My circumstances are very tied here. It's not to say you're doomed to the life that you
No.
have right now either. I want to make that very clear. I did the best I could where I was, but I also just knew that it was time and I really needed to, and my spirit called me to the place I needed to be at. So ultimately, I think it all works out as it's supposed to, and there's no right or wrong in it.
Right. Agreed. For sure. Awesome. This has been very informative. I love learning more about astrology and all the ways that it can actually help you instead of just, being very surface level. Tell everyone where to find you, how to work with you.
Yeah, great. So you could find me at Noonlit Sage, noon like the noon sun, Noon, not moonlit. So Noonlit Sage on Instagram, noonlitsage.com is my website. All my offerings and services are listed on there, and I do work with people remotely if they're not in Phoenix. So I'm open to the world to connect with and meet and help anyone who decides that they want a little bit of astrology in their life.
Awesome. Awesome, Monica. Thank you so much for joining me. I am interested in looking now at my whole chart, so maybe we'll connect after this and look at the whole chart.
Awesome.
And
Love that.
yeah, thank you everyone for listening. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone. I am just so thrilled that you're listening to the Healer Revolution podcast. This has been a huge passion project for me and super therapeutic on top of that, helping me to use my voice and connect with other like-minded individuals. So if you're enjoying the podcast, please like and subscribe. Please share on social media or with your audience or friends or loved ones. I truly appreciate it. It does take a lot of time and financial costs to run the podcast, and it is not a moneymaker, let me tell you. So if you are enjoying this, I would truly appreciate your support just by sending me a post, a like, and a subscribe. Thank you so much.